What if I told you, an empire didn't fall because of war, famine, or rebellion, but because of a single sentence? Yeah. Not an army. Not a plague. A prophecy. And the craziest part, the emperor tried to outrun it, and ended up fulfilling it himself. Alright, sit back. Because this story is wild. Picture this. An empire at its peak. Golden banner snapping in the wind. Armies undefeated. Cities overflowing with trade. Scholars, poets, engineers, the whole will rule forever vibe. This was the Empire of Valeria. And at its center stood Emperor Kel-Arden, brilliant, ruthless, obsessed with control. The kind of ruler who believed destiny wasn't something you waited for, it was something you conquered. Kel didn't fear men. He didn't fear enemies. He didn't even fear the gods. But he feared one thing: losing power. Now, every empire has its mystics. Its seers. Its people who whisper about the future like it's gossip from tomorrow. Most rulers either ignore them, or use them when it's convenient. Kel. He tolerated them. Until the night of the red comet. The comet appeared without warning, slicing across the sky like a blade. Blood red. Bright enough to turn midnight into dusk. The people panicked. Markets closed. Temples overflowed. Because in Valeria, a red comet meant one thing: change. And that same night, an old prophet named Serot requested an audience with the emperor. Serot wasn't flashy. No dramatic robes. No glowing eyes. Just a thin, weathered man with a voice like dry leaves. He stood before the throne and said something that would echo through history. When the lion builds walls against the wind will turn his own house to dust. The empire will fall not by the sword of strangers, but by the hand of its king. That was it. No date. No battle plan. No dramatic thunder. Just that. You could hear the court inhale all at once. Kel didn't shout. Didn't rage. He just leaned forward and asked one question. How? Serot shook his head. In trying to stop it, you begin it. And that's when everything changed. Now, here's the thing about powerful people. The more control they have, the less they can tolerate uncertainty. Kel could handle enemies. He could handle betrayal. But a vague prophecy. That was psychological warfare. So he did what any paranoid genius would do. He decided to outsmart fate. First, he ordered Serot imprisoned. Not executed, imprisoned. Because killing him might trigger the prophecy, right? But keeping him alive meant Kel could extract more details later. Then came the walls. Remember the line. When the lion builds walls against the wind. Kel interpreted it literally. He ordered massive fortifications around the capital. Thicker gates. Higher towers. Entire neighborhoods demolished to create defensive zones. Taxes doubled to fund construction. Farmers were conscripted into labor. People grumbled, but they obeyed. After all, this was for protection. But here's where it gets interesting. The empire had never been attacked from within. Its strength came from open trade routes and strong alliances. By focusing inward, by building walls, Kel began isolating Valeria. Merchants couldn't move freely anymore. Neighboring kingdoms grew suspicious. Why so defensive, they whispered. What is he preparing for? Trade slowed. Allies cooled. But Kel wasn't done. He began purging his court. The prophecy said the empire would fall by his own hand. So clearly, someone close to him would manipulate him into doing it. Right. So he removed anyone he didn't completely trust. Generals replaced. Advisors executed. Governors arrested. Each removal made him feel safer. Each removal made the empire weaker. See the pattern. Fear doesn't just cloud judgment. It reshapes reality. Years passed. The walls stood tall. The army remained strong. no invasion came. And Kale began to believe he had beaten destiny. Until the drought. It started quietly. Crops failing in the south. Wells drying in villages. Normally, Valeria could import grain. They had trade networks for that. But remember, trade had collapsed. Neighboring kingdoms, now alienated, raised prices. Some refused to sell at all. You ward yourself off, they said. Feed yourselves. Food shortages turned into riots. Riots turned into rebellion. And this is the moment everything snapped. Kale, convinced that the unrest was foreign manipulation, ordered the army to crush the uprisings brutally. Entire districts were burned. Suspected rebels executed publicly. Grain stockpiles seized for redistribution, but mostly redirected to the capital. And just like that, the people who once saw him as a symbol of strength began seeing him as the enemy. The lion had built walls against the wind. But the wind wasn't outside. It was inside. One night, in a desperate attempt to restore control, Kale made a final decision. He would centralize all remaining power, dissolve regional councils, take direct command of food distribution, and move the entire treasury into the capital fortress. Total authority, he declared, ensures total stability. It did the opposite. When rebels in the south captured a single supply route, the capital starved. When soldiers realized their families were among those being crushed, loyalty fractured. And then, the unthinkable happened. Not a foreign army. Not assassins from a rival kingdom. His own elite guard, the same unit he personally selected after purging the old generals, turned on him. Not because of prophecy. Because of hunger. Exhaustion. Fear. They stormed the inner palace. Kale retreated to the highest tower of the very wall he built. From there, he watched smoke rise from his own city. And in that moment, just before he was captured, he reportedly whispered, "I stopped the wind." But he hadn't. He had become it. The empire fell within weeks. Provinces declared independence. Allies seized border territories. The once glorious Valeria fractured into smaller states that never regained its former power. And Serath. The prophet was found in his cell, smiling. He hadn't needed magic. Just understanding. Here's what makes this story powerful, and honestly kind of terrifying. The prophecy didn't destroy the empire. The emperor's reaction to it did. It wasn't fate. It was fear. Think about it. If Kale had ignored the prophecy, nothing might have happened. If he had strengthened alliances instead of isolating them, the drought might have been manageable. If he had trusted his people instead of purging them, rebellion might not have erupted. The prophecy was like a spark. But Kale built the firewood. And that's the deeper lesson. Sometimes, the thing we're trying hardest to avoid becomes the exact thing we create. We build emotional walls to avoid betrayal and end up alone. We clamp down on control to prevent chaos and create resentment. We act out of fear and call it strategy. And just like that, small decisions stack up into collapse. History is full of prophecies like this. Warnings. Predictions. Economic forecasts. Political rumors. But the real power isn't in the prediction. It's in how leaders respond to it. Kale believed he was fighting destiny. In reality, he was fighting uncertainty and losing. So next time you hear someone say, "This is inevitable," remember Valeria. Nothing is inevitable. Until fear starts making your decisions. And that is how a prophecy destroyed an empire. Not with magic. Not with divine wrath. But with a ruler who couldn't sit still in the face of uncertainty. Crazy, right? Now imagine how many empires, ancient and modern, are walking that same tightrope today.